I'd like to start this morning with a couple of things. When we were, people who are new to Unity today, Unity is very different, and it's really a change in lifestyle. It's not, like Sunday you come to church and then you leave and then it's game over till next Sunday type thing. It's more of a lifestyle change, and so that means incorporating different spiritual practices as part of your life. And so when we were doing, for a while there I was doing wellness Sundays. When you have 5 Sundays in a month, the 5th one we would do a wellness Sunday. And then we'd do different kind of things. And so when we got back together and started working the live again a couple of months ago, I decided, some of this stuff works out real nice. So I want to share a couple of them with you today before I start my lesson. And the first one is gratitude. I've incorporated gratitude into the Sunday service every Sunday. So I'd like to invite you right now to just kind of take a deep centering breath. Because when you take a deep breath, it just opens you all up and relaxes you, and it sends out all those good, whatever they are, hormones or whatever they are, and it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, and everything is really wonderful. It's very good for your body. So I'm going to invite you just to take a couple of deep breaths and bring somebody that you, or something that you love, that you are so grateful for, into what we call your heart space. And just hold them there for a moment. And just feel, again, feeling. Feel the gratitude, the deep gratitude for that person, or that could be a pet, whatever it might be, that is part of your life. And I'm going to invite you just to hold that feeling just for a moment in the silence. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. Now, another thing that we used to do for Wellness Sundays, I think, Matt, maybe some of you might remember, I certainly do. In the Reader's Digest, in the old days, there used to be a section called Laughter is the Best Medicine. And we now know that laughter really is good medicine for you. So again, in the Wellness Sundays, I was doing that. And so I started using laughter as part of my service. I'm very different. I'll just do things differently. So I'm going to share a couple of things with you this morning, all right? First one is this one. There was this young couple, tragically, they suffered an automobile accident on the way to their wedding. And so when they got up to heaven, St. Peter was waiting there for them, because, he's the official greeter in heaven. So that's his job. So he was there. And they were still very enthusiastic about the whole wedding idea. So they talked to St. Peter, saying, St. Pete, we want to ask you something. Is it possible to get married up here? And he says, I'll have to get back with you on that one. So an entire year passed. And then one day, St. Peter, he sees them and he said, hey, great news, the wedding is on. And they go, that's awesome. He said, but just to cover all the bases, on the outside chance that it doesn't work out, can we get a divorce up here? And St. Peter looked at him and said, are you kidding me? It took me a year to find a preacher? You want me to find a lawyer? You see, it's good for you. One more. Jesus and Moses were playing golf. Moses was up, he had the box, as we say, and he got his, par 3. He took his 5-iron, and he gave it a good whack straight into the water. So here comes Jesus. He grabs his 5-iron and says, Tiger Woods would use this club. And Moses tells him, are you kidding me? Didn't you see what I just did with the 5? He said, Tiger Woods would use this club. He said, I think you should use the 4. You saw what just happened. Jesus said, Tiger Woods would use this club. grabs the 5, gets up there, gets it a really good whack, straight into the water. So here's Jesus walking on the water, looking for his golf ball, and another golfer comes by, and he asks Moses, who does that guy think he is, Jesus? And he says, no, he's Jesus. The problem is he thinks he's Tiger Woods. Anyway, that's my humor for today. Today's lesson, on a serious note, today's lesson is As a Man Thinketh, and I misspelled that, it's not E-T-H. And it is based on this small yet very powerful book written by James Allen, published in 1902. James Allen was a British philosophical writer and a self-help pioneer. If you can go online and you can download this entire library, it's there for free, you can download this little book, or you can buy it. How many are you familiar with this book? I'm sure there's a few, not very many. Okay, great. If you have read it, if you've never read it, I certainly recommend that you do. It's only 60 pages, and it's also a great starter, new thought type of a book, maybe as a gift for a friend or somebody who's not familiar with how we do things in the New Thought movement. And if you have read it and it's been a long time, I would recommend maybe you pick it up again. Because again, it's very short, and now that you've been in Unity, you're going to look at it a little bit differently. The first time I read this was back in the 70s. That was a long time ago. And way before I had any idea what Unity was about. But yet something about the book really appealed to me. I liked it. And if you look back, the book, $1.95. That's how long ago the book, this is a cute one anyway. Anyway, but even though it made sense to me and I liked it, I had never read anything along this style of writing. So I just saw it as an isolated concept back then. I just kind of let it go with that. But now that I think back to the 70s, I used to remember watching Robert Schuller's Hour of Power. I don't know why it would appeal to me. So now I'm thinking back, and obviously all this idea of positive thinking and a positive way of looking at life makes sense to me from way back when. Little did I know that I was laying the ground to someday becoming a Unity minister way down the road. So when I came to Unity, I understood that this way of seeing life from a positive perspective is not isolated at all. It's part of a big movement that we call the New Thought movement. And in fact, not only is it not isolated, it's really not exclusive to New Thought at all. It goes way back. 2,500 years ago, Buddha wrote, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." This is the Buddha. In Unity, when I came here, I also learned that these ideas in the book were in line with Jesus' teachings. And let's take a couple examples. Jesus said, "Be it done to you as you believe. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." One more. Your faith has healed you. Now, what do these three examples have in common? Clearly that what we hold in our hearts and in our minds, that is our feelings and our beliefs, are what manifests in our lives. That's the message. It's an empowering message. It puts our lives in our hands, our destinies in our hands. And that is a far cry from the traditional view that we are lowly sinners in an ancient and merciless universe. Now, when you stop to think about this message, again, I'm a philosophy major, I've thought about these things a lot for a long time. How else could it really be? If we are indeed created in the image and likeness of God, and we have free will, how else can it be other than we are in charge of our own destinies and of our own lives? That makes us powerful co-creators of the universe, we say in Unity. It's an empowering message, as I said, based on the fact of our true essence, who we truly, truly are. So before I begin, let me do a short little disclaimer. And that is, like a lot of the internet material, it's written in that old 1900, very heavily masculine language. So don't let that bother you. When he says man or men, he refers to mankind. So it's, let it go. Don't get hung up. Well, forget it. So having said that, the book is divided into 7 short chapters. And it begins with a foreword. And the author sets the tone of the book right off the bat. He writes, its objective, the book that is, being to stimulate men and women to the discovery and the perception of the truth that they themselves are makers of themselves, by the virtue of the thoughts which they choose and encourage. That mind is the master weaver of the inner garment of character and the outer garment of circumstance. And that as they may have hitherto woven in ignorance and pain, they may now weave in enlightenment and happiness. I like that mind is the master weaver. You can kind of picture it. Both of the inner garment of character and the outer garment of circumstance. That is well painted. I can see it. It's kind of weird. So first chapter is titled Thought and Character. And we get this from that. Of all the beautiful truths pertaining to the soul which have been restored and brought to life in this age, none is more gladdening and fruitful of divine promise and confidence than this, that man is the master of thought, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of condition, environment, and destiny. All of this is telling us that who we are and what we experience is determined to a great extent by our thoughts. And it is also reminding us that we have woven something less than what we want in our lives, undesirable, that at any given time we have the option to change that because of our free will and because of our creative power. Change it. So what do we say in Unity? Change your life, change your thoughts, change your life, change your world. So I'm going to ask you to consider one thing. What kind of thoughts are you holding today? And not just about any particular thing, but just in general. And I want to challenge you to, next time you're in the conversation with somebody, about whatever it might be, to listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. What are you saying? What is the emotion that is carried with that, whatever it is, conversation that you're having with that person? Is it love and compassion? Or it's something maybe less than love and compassion? Again, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to challenge you, because that's how we grow spiritually. Remember, Charles Fillmore said, we have dominion over our thoughts. We can change our thoughts, and we can change our lives. Chapter 1, Thought and Character, begins by connecting our thoughts to our character. Now, that's no coincidence that he starts that way, because why? What do we teach in Unity? That everything starts from the inside, from you, and goes outward. See, we have this misguided way of looking at things, that things are happening to us. No, not happening to us. It's the other way around. It's this way. So, he tells us that what we hold in our hearts embraces the whole of our being, he says, but it's so comprehensive that it reaches out to every condition and every circumstance of our lives. We are literally what we are thinking. And that the actions that we take are the blossoms of our thoughts. And those blossoms take the form of joy or suffering, depending on the thoughts. He continues to make this point over and over. And that's very important. Man is the master of thought, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of condition, environment, and destiny. It's kind of scary to think that we're that powerful, actually. Because, Like, but you remember Flip Wilson? The devil made me do it. No, sir. The devil did not make you do it. That was your choice. Okay, so this is all telling us that what we are seeing in the world is ourselves, a reflection of ourselves. There is a quote. It says, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. That's interesting. So one final thought from that section is reminding us that we are always manifesting because we are always sending out thought energy into the universe. So whether by default or any other way, it's happening. Consider that. And that brings us to chapter 2, thought and circumstance. Because here, he likens the whole process to a garden. And he says that our thoughts are the seeds that we plant into the garden. And what's going to come up? I mean, if you plant an apple seed, what's going to come up? An orange tree? I don't think so. It doesn't work that way. And so this brings up the notion, and I got this from Science of Mind the first time it crossed my mind, that the universe is neutral. It gives you back what you give it. And thus the adage from Jesus, it says, we reap what we sow. Oof. Because you're planting these thoughts. You are. And you have to reap what you plant. Anyway, the subsequent chapters then turn into some sort of aspect of our lives regarding our thoughts. And the next one is about health and our body. And about this, he writes, strong, pure, and happy thoughts build up the body in vigor and grace. The body is a delicate and plastic instrument which responds readily to the thoughts by which it is impressed. I found that fascinating that he would be saying that well over 100 years ago, 20 years or so before the 1919 pandemic. And when this pandemic came up, and I was watching the news one day, they said that when that pandemic was happening, we didn't even have antibiotics yet. I said, we didn't? Wow, let alone, vaccines. So medicine has come a long way since then. Very far removed. And now medicine knows that, in fact, what he was saying, that these thoughts can alter your body, is very much true. At the time, it was probably seen as, oh, that's just your opinion. But now medicine knows that, in fact, this is true. It has been well documented over and over. He writes, disease and health, like circumstances, are rooted in thought. Sickly thoughts will express themselves as a sickly body. He wrote that a long time ago. We now know, I went through this, one of the great courses that you mentioned. I don't know if you're familiar with the great courses, but anyway. Was this Dr. G, who I forgot her name, and she's a big hotshot. Used to be a cardiologist, and now she runs the Scripps Clinic, is that what it's called, in San Diego or something. And she now uses that whole approach of trying to find out, what are you thinking? What is going on in your life? Because now medicine realizes that a lot of the conditions that we have are internal. They're coming from the inside of some sort or another. And that gives credence to our idea that things work from the inside out, that we're seeing the reflection of our condition, our spiritual condition, if you will. So this is not new for Unity at all. Like I said, it goes way, way back. And now there's this thing called positive psychology. I'm not sure familiar if you, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it sounds like a very interesting field. It's a whole new field, and it sounds a whole lot like kind of stuff that we're doing. So we have to be open to changing the way we see things, to growing, because that's how we grow spiritually. One more thing about positive thinking. He says, if you would perfect your body, guard your mind. If you would renew your body, beautify your mind. Thoughts of malice, envy, disappointment, despondency rob the body of its health and its grace. Wow. So chapter 4 and 5 then are called Thought and Purpose and Thought and Achievement. And this one I kind of think of as our fifth principle, taking the idea of our thoughts and actually what you accomplish or what you do with them type thing. He says, until thought is linked with a purpose, there is no intelligent accomplishment. With the majority of us, the bark of thought is allowed to drift onto the ocean of life. Aimlessness is a vice, and such drifting must not continue for him or her who would steer clear of catastrophe and destruction. He says, you are the captain of your ship. Get a hold of the helm and steer it. Otherwise, you will drift aimlessly. Thought, purpose, and achievement is about the mental fortitude to carry on something a little bit bigger. Start getting yourself organized. The final two chapters, one is called Visions and Ideals, and the last one is Serenity. Let's visit that. First, I want you to notice how the book has developed. It started with a character from the inside, and then it worked out to our circumstances, and then to our body and our health. It's moving outward. Again, it's moving from the in, out, 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 out. And now the vision and ideals, now we're getting to the big picture. Let's look at the big picture of things. Because the big picture is what we've always wanted. I'm a philosophy, I've already said 3 times now, right? I'm a philosophy major. And so from the beginning of time, we wanted to figure out, what is everything made of? What is the most fundamental thing that there is? The Greeks, man, they were like, it was fire, it was water, it was air. Then they said about atoms, and they were kind of getting closer. But here's what we know now, today, in this world. We now know that the most fundamental thing that there is not even a thing. There is no such thing as a thing, fundamentally. Now that's a strange way of looking at things because we're not used to it. Everything has come down to being energy. Just pure, creative, intelligent energy. And this creative, intelligent energy permeates everything and everyone. From the largest galaxies to me, to you, to ants, to cells, to everything. And I learned somewhere along the way that not only is it in everything, it is in everything in its entirety. I said, what? In its entirety? In any given little minuscule of a spot? God exists there in its entirety. That's what, you know, when Paul wrote that in him we live and move and have our being, I really kind of like that because it gives you that notion, that feeling that we are immersed in this ocean of stuff. And that ocean of stuff is intelligent, creative energy. We called it God because we didn't know what else to call it for the longest time. But we're getting a new understanding of things, and it's changing. So if any of this makes any sense to you, that tells me that you're moving along spiritually. And that's not to say that, you know, superior, inferior, you're better off, none of that stuff, because everything is relative. It's like saying, well, you know, I'm in the 12th grade and this guy's in the 2nd grade, I'm better than him. Well, just because you're in the 12th grade, not really, because that guy might end up being a doctor, and you don't. So everything's relative. So it's not about that. It's that about your unfolding and how you're seeing things differently. And so I want to, one of the things that, I just did a book, a series on the book, what is Finding a Greater, Unfolding a Greater Reality by Robert Brummett, whatever it's called. And he and Greg Braden are talking about the same type of a thing. That we continue to grow and grow and grow and expand spiritually, consciously, until we reach a certain plateau. And once we hit that plateau, then something has to happen. You know, we just do. And what's happening now is this greater awakening of a quantum leap in consciousness where we're seeing things differently. As I said, not that things are things, but that things are energy, and that we are energy beings. And I mean, let's face it, this body is going to cease to exist someday. The body is, but not the energy that drives the body. What we would call spirit or soul or whatever you might want to call it. So this change, this finding of what everything is made of also extends into our spirituality. Well, what is the most fundamental thing? And we called it God again. But we've always looked, just like we were looking for an outward way of what the most basic thing is, well, the same way with God. We were looking outwardly, always have been. And that's just the wrong way of looking at things. Because we've seen God as something with something. For example, God is omnipotent. God is omnipresent. God is omniscient. That describes something, with properties. And that makes the thing and the properties separate from one another. And that's an outward way of looking at things. That's not how it goes. Let me change that for you real quickly. God is not omnipotent. God is omnipotence. God is not omnipresent. God is omnipresence. God is not omniscient. God is omniscience. That changes everything. It removes that anthropomorphic view of God that we've always had. And that's our biggest problem, seeing God as something. That is our biggest problem. We've got to get rid of it because not only is it incorrect, but it hampers our spiritual unfolding. It limits ourselves to how we can see things. And so this raises God to a level of transcendence. Now, does that mean that God is not personal? Not at all. This is the grand paradox. Because God is both transcendent as principle, as we say in unity, but God is also immanent, personal in expression. As me, as you, as us, as everything. So I want to leave you with the idea that the last chapter talks about serenity. And what we're ultimately trying to find is that peace of mind that is God, that we have called God, this divine energy. Because in the Bible it says, be still and know that I am God. And I want to change that to you this morning and say, be still and know that I am God, that you are God, that we are God, that everything is God. Have a great afternoon and a blessed week.